What if the time you choose to work out is just as important as what you do in your workout? And what if most men are training at exactly the wrong time of day for their testosterone, their hormonal recovery, and their long-term performance? Because here is something that almost no fitness content talks about clearly. Your body's hormonal environment shifts dramatically throughout the day. Testosterone peaks at specific windows. Cortisol follows its own daily curve. Muscle temperature, neural activation, and anabolic signaling all vary by the hour. And the training you do at 6 a.m. produces a fundamentally different hormonal response than the exact same training done at 5 p.m. Not because the exercises are different, not because the intensity is different, but because the internal hormonal landscape your body brings to that training session is different. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what science says about the best time to work out for maximum testosterone boost, the biology behind why timing matters, the specific hormonal windows you should be training in and the ones you should be avoiding, how to structure your workout at each time of day for maximum hormonal impact, the side effects of training at the wrong times, who needs to be especially mindful of workout timing, and a complete step-by-step guide to implementing the optimal training schedule for your testosterone. Stay with me, because the timing insight in this video might produce more hormonal benefit than any change you have made to your actual workout program. I'm Dr. Christine Rodriguez, and this is Men's Vitality Hub. This channel exists to give men like you authentic, valid knowledge about your health, so you can make real, informed decisions that actually change how you feel and perform. Real biology, honest science, practical guidance. That is what we are here for. Let's go deep. Here is exactly what this video is going to give you. Stay for every section because the full picture makes this immediately actionable. First, I'm going to explain the biology of how the time of day affects the hormonal response to exercise, the circadian mechanisms that make workout timing a genuine hormonal variable. Then, I'm going to walk you through what the research shows about morning, afternoon, and evening training and their specific effects on testosterone. Then I'm going to be completely honest about the side effects and the hormonal costs of training at the wrong times. Then I'm going to show you exactly how to prevent those costs. Then I'm going to tell you which men need to be most thoughtful about workout timing. And finally, the complete, practical, step-by-step guide to structuring your training schedule and your actual workout for maximum testosterone benefit. Every section matters. Let's start with the biology. Your body does not experience time the same way a clock does. Internally, every major physiological process, hormone production, body temperature regulation, neural activation, metabolic rate, muscular performance, follows a rhythmic daily pattern called the circadian rhythm, governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus, the biological master clock that synchronizes your internal physiology with the external light-dark cycle. This circadian regulation means that at any given hour of the day, your body is in a specific hormonal and physiological state that is different from every other hour. And that state determines how your body responds to the stress of training. Testosterone follows a very specific circadian pattern in men. It reaches its highest concentration of the day in the early morning, typically peaking between 7 and 10 a.m., and then gradually declines through the day, reaching its lowest point in the late evening hours. This morning testosterone peak is the result of the LH pulses that drove testosterone synthesis during the previous night's deep sleep. It represents the hormonal capital that your body has accumulated overnight and is now making available for the activities of the day. Cortisol follows its own circadian pattern. also peaking in the early morning through what is called the cortisol awakening response, where it surges to its highest daily concentration in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, and then gradually declining through the afternoon and evening. The morning cortisol peak serves a biological purpose. It mobilizes glucose, activates the immune system, and prepares every major system for the demands of the day. But for training purposes, this morning cortisol peak creates a specific consideration that most men never think about: core body temperature, which directly influences muscular performance, neural conduction velocity, enzyme activity, and the speed and power output of muscle tissue, follows a different circadian pattern. It is at its lowest in the early morning hours and rises progressively through the day, reaching its peak in the late afternoon, typically between 3 and 7 p.m. This temperature-driven performance peak is the primary reason that physical performance, strength, power output, reaction time, endurance capacity, is measurably higher in the afternoon and early evening than in the morning for most men. These three circadian curves, testosterone, cortisol, and core body temperature, create the hormonal and physiological landscape that your training session encounters, depending on what time of day you train. And understanding how they interact determines which training window is optimal for testosterone maximization. Now, let's talk about what the research actually shows for each primary training window: morning, afternoon, and evening, and their specific effects on testosterone. Morning training, roughly 6 to 10 a.m., has both significant advantages and significant considerations for testosterone. The advantage is that morning training occurs during or just after the testosterone peak of the day, meaning the anabolic hormonal environment that training is designed to stimulate is at its most favorable baseline. A study published in the journal Hormones and Behavior found that men who trained in the morning showed acute testosterone responses to exercise that, while starting from the morning peak, interacted with a hormonal environment already primed for anabolic activity. Morning training also has circadian benefits. It reinforces the natural cortisol awakening response, strengthens the circadian anchor established by morning light exposure, and sets a hormonal tone for the day that carries through to better afternoon energy and improved evening sleep drive. The consideration for morning training is the elevated cortisol baseline of the early morning. Training during or immediately after the cortisol awakening response, particularly fasted before any food intake, can produce a cortisol-to-testosterone ratio that is less favorable than training later in the day, when cortisol has naturally declined. Research published in the International Journal of Sports Physiology and Performance found that morning fasted resistance training produced higher cortisol responses and a less favorable anabolic hormonal environment than afternoon training in the same subjects. The implication is not that morning training is bad. It is that morning training requires specific nutritional and timing adjustments to optimize the testosterone response, which we will cover in the how-to section. Afternoon training, roughly 2 to 6 p.m., is where the research most consistently points as the optimal window for testosterone response and physical performance. By the early afternoon, the morning cortisol surge has subsided. Core body temperature has risen to near its daily peak, neural conduction velocity is at its highest, and muscle tissue is warmer, more pliable, and capable of greater force production. A landmark study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that men training in the afternoon showed significantly higher testosterone responses to the same resistance training protocol compared to morning training, with free testosterone in particular showing more robust acute elevations in the afternoon window. Additional research has confirmed that strength output, the weight men can lift for the same number of repetitions, is measurably higher in the afternoon than in the morning for most men, meaning the training stimulus that drives testosterone signaling is inherently greater in the afternoon window. The hormonal explanation for this afternoon advantage involves the interaction between naturally declining cortisol and the acute testosterone stimulus of resistance training. When training occurs in the afternoon, after cortisol has been declining for several hours, the post-training hormonal environment is characterized by a sharper testosterone to cortisol ratio improvement than morning training produces. The anabolic window after an afternoon session is hormonally cleaner and more conducive to the testosterone-driven recovery and adaptation process. Evening training, roughly 7 to 10 p.m., presents the most significant hormonal trade-off. On the positive side, core body temperature remains near its daily peak in the early evening, performance capacity is high, and the cumulative testosterone-cortisol dynamics of a full day create a specific hormonal state that can produce strong training responses. Some research has found that testosterone responses to resistance training in the early evening are comparable to afternoon responses in men who are well adapted to evening training schedules. The significant concern with evening training is its interaction with sleep, and specifically with the overnight testosterone production that deep sleep drives. Intense exercise within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime elevates core body temperature, increases sympathetic nervous system activation, raises cortisol, and delays the onset of the sleep stages where LH pulses and testosterone synthesis occur. Research has consistently documented that late evening exercise delays sleep onset, reduces deep sleep duration, and fragments sleep architecture, all of which reduce overnight testosterone production. For men whose primary hormonal goal is testosterone optimization, trading the sleep quality that drives overnight testosterone synthesis for a convenient evening training slot is a poor hormonal bargain. Still with me? Good, because now let's talk about the specific side effects of training at the wrong times, the hormonal costs that accumulate when workout timing consistently conflicts with the body's circadian hormonal rhythms. The first side effect of chronically mistimed training is suboptimal testosterone to cortisol ratios. Men who consistently train during the morning cortisol peak, particularly fasted without nutritional preparation, are working against the hormonal environment rather than with it. The cortisol-heavy morning training window produces acute hormonal responses that are less anabolic and more catabolic than afternoon training, meaning the testosterone-building signal of each session is partially blunted by the cortisol environment it occurs in. The second side effect of late evening training is sleep disruption and the resulting overnight testosterone suppression. This is arguably the most significant timing-related hormonal cost available to men, because overnight testosterone production represents the majority of daily testosterone output. Men who consistently train late in the evening and then struggle to fall asleep or experience fragmented, shallow sleep are sacrificing the most important testosterone production window of the day for the convenience of a late workout. The third side effect is reduced training quality from suboptimal physiological readiness. Men who train in the early morning, before core body temperature has risen and before the neuromuscular system has fully activated, are training with physically suboptimal muscle temperature and neural readiness. The result is lower force production, increased injury risk from cold connective tissue, and a reduced training stimulus that produces a weaker hormonal signal. Men who feel significantly weaker in the morning than in the afternoon are experiencing this physiological reality directly. Now, how do you prevent these side effects and optimize the testosterone response regardless of when you train? The first prevention strategy for morning trainers is nutritional preparation before the session. Consuming 20 to 30 grams of protein and a moderate carbohydrate source, roughly 30 to 50 grams, 45 to 60 minutes before a morning training session significantly reduces the cortisol response to fasted morning training, provides glucose to prevent cortisol-driven gluconeogenesis during the session, and supports a more favorable testosterone to cortisol ratio throughout the workout. This pre-training meal does not need to be large. Eggs with fruit, Greek yogurt with oats, or a protein shake with a banana all accomplish the nutritional preparation goal effectively. The second prevention strategy for morning trainers is an extended warm-up. Because core body temperature is lower in the morning, a thorough 10 to 15-minute warm-up, light cardio, dynamic stretching, and progressively loaded warm-up sets elevates muscle temperature, increases neural activation, and reduces the injury risk and performance deficit of cold morning training. Morning trainers who skip warm-up and go directly into heavy compound movements are training with cold connective tissue and suboptimal neural readiness, increasing injury risk and reducing the training stimulus that drives testosterone signaling. The third prevention strategy for evening trainers is establishing a strict training cutoff. No training sessions ending later than 2 hours before planned bedtime. This 2-hour buffer allows core body temperature and sympathetic nervous system activation to begin declining before sleep, protecting sleep onset and deep sleep architecture. Evening trainers who respect this cutoff can capture the performance benefits of late-day physiological readiness without the sleep disruption that later training produces. The fourth prevention strategy is using morning light exposure and caffeine timing to support the circadian anchoring that makes any training window more hormonally effective. The morning sunlight practice we have discussed on this channel, 5 to 10 minutes of outdoor light exposure within 30 minutes of waking, sets the circadian clock that governs the timing of every subsequent hormonal event, including the cortisol and testosterone rhythms that determine training response. Men who anchor their circadian rhythm with morning light produce more predictable, more favorable hormonal patterns throughout the day, making their training window, whatever it is, hormonally more consistent and effective. Now, which men need to be most thoughtful about workout timing? Men who are already dealing with low testosterone have the least hormonal margin to absorb suboptimal training timing. For these men, every hormonal variable, including workout timing, matters more than for men with robust testosterone reserves. Training in the afternoon window, eating before morning sessions, and protecting sleep from evening training disruption are higher priority considerations for men with compromised hormonal baselines. Men with highly disrupted sleep or circadian rhythm dysregulation, night shift workers, frequent travelers across time zones, men with sleep disorders, face a situation where the standard morning testosterone peak and afternoon cortisol valley may not align with conventional clock times. These men need to think about workout timing relative to their personal sleep-wake cycle, rather than the clock, applying the same principles. Training after the cortisol peak has declined, avoiding training within 2 hours of sleep, training with nutritional preparation, relative to their individual circadian phase rather than conventional time. Men with adrenal fatigue or chronically elevated cortisol should be especially cautious about morning fasted training, which places additional cortisol demand on an already compromised adrenal system. For these men, afternoon training after food intake is consumed is the most hormonally supportive option available while adrenal function is being restored. Men who are in aggressive caloric deficits face elevated morning cortisol from the overnight fast and the caloric restriction itself, meaning their morning training environment is even more cortisol dominant than metabolically healthy men, and the afternoon training advantage is even more pronounced for their hormonal optimization. Now, the complete step-by-step guide to structuring your training schedule and your actual workout for maximum testosterone benefit. Step 1 is choosing your optimal training window. If your schedule allows any flexibility, target the early afternoon window between 2 and 6 p.m. This is where the research most consistently points for the best testosterone response, the best physical performance, and the most favorable cortisol-to-testosterone dynamics. If afternoon training is not possible due to work or life schedule, morning training with proper preparation is entirely viable for testosterone optimization. It simply requires the nutritional and warm-up adjustments described above. If evening training is your only option, train as early in the evening as possible and establish the 2-hour pre-sleep cutoff as a non-negotiable boundary. Step 2 is pre-workout nutrition regardless of training time. Whether morning, afternoon, or evening, train fed, not fasted, for testosterone optimization. The nutritional preparation reduces cortisol response, supports anabolic signaling, and provides the raw materials for the hormonal response you are trying to stimulate. Morning: 20 to 30 grams of protein and 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates, 45 to 60 minutes before training. Afternoon or evening: a complete meal 2 to 3 hours before training, or a smaller protein and carbohydrate snack 45 to 60 minutes before, if the full meal was earlier. Step 3 is structuring the session itself for maximum testosterone stimulus. Lead with compound movements: squats, deadlifts, bench press, rows, overhead press, that recruit the largest muscle mass and produce the strongest LH stimulatory signal. Use moderate to heavy loads, 70 to 85% of your 1-rep maximum, for sets of 6 to 12 repetitions. Research has consistently shown this loading range produces the most robust acute testosterone response. Rest 90 to 120 seconds between sets of compound movements, sufficient to maintain performance quality across sets, without allowing the hormonal activation of the training session to dissipate completely. Step 4 is session duration discipline. Keep your training session between 45 and 75 minutes. As we discussed in our overtraining video, sessions extending beyond 75 to 90 minutes begin to produce a net cortisol elevation that outweighs the testosterone stimulus. Quality over quantity. 50 focused minutes of heavy compound training produces a stronger testosterone response than 90 minutes of high-volume, fatigue-accumulated training. Step 5 is post-workout nutrition within 30 to 45 minutes of training completion. The post-training anabolic window, the period of elevated insulin sensitivity and amplified muscle protein synthesis following resistance training, is where the testosterone stimulus of the session is converted into actual muscle adaptation. Consuming 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein alongside 40 to 60 grams of carbohydrates within this window provides the amino acids and glucose that muscle protein synthesis requires and supports the hormonal recovery from training. Whole food options: chicken with rice, eggs with potatoes, Greek yogurt with fruit, are equally effective as protein shakes for this purpose. Step 6 is protecting the overnight testosterone production window that training is designed to stimulate. Whatever time you train, the testosterone benefit of your workout is ultimately realized during the deep sleep that follows it. Training is the stimulus. Sleep is the response. Protect your sleep with the same priority you protect your training session. Consistent bedtime, dark and cool sleep environment, no screens or work stimulation within 60 to 90 minutes of bed, and the extended exhale breathing practice that down-regulates the nervous system before sleep. The man who trains well but sleeps poorly is leaving the majority of his training's hormonal benefit unrealized. Step 7 is consistency above all else. The research on training time and testosterone identifies the afternoon as the optimal window. But the best training time is ultimately the training time you can maintain consistently, week after week, across the months and years that meaningful hormonal and physical adaptation requires. An afternoon session 3 times per week, practiced consistently for a year, produces infinitely more testosterone benefit than a theoretically optimal training schedule maintained for 2 weeks before life makes it unsustainable. Build your training schedule around your real life. Optimize it as much as possible within that reality, and commit to the consistency that is the true driver of long-term hormonal health. The best workout time is not the one on the research chart. It is the one you show up for, consistently, week after week. The man who understands his circadian hormonal rhythm, trains in the window that best supports his testosterone response, prepares nutritionally before and after his sessions, protects his sleep as the anabolic recovery window, and shows up consistently. That man is training with his biology, not against it. And the cumulative hormonal return on that alignment over months and years is a testosterone profile and a physical capacity that reflects what intelligent, consistent, biology-aligned training actually produces. Train at the right time, eat at the right time, sleep at the right time. Testosterone does not respond to effort alone. It responds to intelligence. If this video gave you a completely new understanding of why workout timing matters for your testosterone, if you are going to adjust your training schedule based on what you learned today, please hit that like button right now and subscribe to Men's Vitality Hub. Every week, this is what we bring you: real science, honest guidance, practical protocols for men who are serious about training intelligently and living at their hormonal best. And tell me in the comments, what time of day do you currently train? And after watching this video, are you going to make a change? Drop your answer below, because your commitment, stated publicly, is one of the most powerful predictors of whether you actually follow through. And your experience might be exactly what helps another man in this community make the timing adjustment that changes his results. Thank you for watching. Train smart, train at the right time. I will see you in the next one.